My name is Wes Talren, and I'm a forensic accountant. That means I find money that people don't want found. Numbers don't lie, people do. After 15 years of tracking corporate fraud, I thought I knew every trick in the book. Turns out, the biggest fraud was sitting across from me at dinner every night. The revelation came at Aurelius, one of those rooftop restaurants where the appetizers cost more than my first car. Veda had insisted we join her boss for dinner. It's important for my career, Wes. Cedric wants to get to know you better. Cedric Fallon. Even his name sounded greasy. He ran the consulting arm of Veda's law firm, all flash and no substance. The kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits to hide a bargain basement soul. So, Wes, Cedric said, cutting into his Wagyu beef with theatrical precision, Veda tells me you're in accounting. Must be thrilling, crunching numbers all day. I smiled tightly. Forensic accounting? I investigate financial crimes, white-collar criminals, tax evasion, money laundering, that sort of thing. Cedric's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second. But I caught it. How fascinating, he said, recovering quickly. Must keep you busy. Oh, you'd be surprised how much fraud is out there, especially in consulting firms. Shell companies, offshore accounts, fake invoices. The IRS loves it when I hand them a complete case file. Veda kicked me under the table. Wes, please, we're trying to have a nice dinner. Of course, darling. I took a sip of wine. Just making conversation. The evening progressed with the usual small talk. Cedric regaled us with stories of his latest deals, each one more impressive than the last. Veda hung on every word, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when she made a point. I watched it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing lab rats. Then came the moment that changed everything. You know, Wes, Cedric said, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied smirk. Veda tells me everything about her life. Everything. And I have to say, you're quite the project at home. Veda blushed. Actually blushed. Like a schoolgirl being teased about her crush. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they hurt, though they did, but because of what they revealed. The casual intimacy in his tone. The way he said everything with such knowing emphasis. The fact that my wife of 12 years had reduced me to a project in conversations with her boss. I felt something shift inside me, a gear clicking into place. The same cold clarity that came when I found the smoking gun in a fraud case. I stood up slowly, reached into my wallet, and placed $500 bills on the table. The crisp 20s looked absurdly formal against the white tablecloth. Keep the change, I said, my voice perfectly calm. You'll need it when the IRS audit I triggered finishes. The silence that followed was beautiful. Cedric's face went pale, then flushed red. Veda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The couple at the next table stopped talking and stared. Wes, Veda whispered, what are you... Enjoy your evening, I said, and walked away. I could feel every eye in the restaurant on me as I made my way to the exit. The maitre d' looked confused, probably wondering if he should stop me or bow. I chose to interpret his expression as respectful admiration. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped onto the street. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Veda, no doubt, trying to do damage control. I turned it off and drove home in blessed silence. That night, while Veda stayed out until nearly 2 a.m., I sat in my home office and did what I do best. I followed the money. Cedric Fallon's consulting firm, Apex Strategic Solutions, had been on my radar for weeks. Not officially, I wasn't assigned to investigate them, but certain patterns in their financial filings had caught my attention, consulting fees that didn't match industry standards, payments to shell companies with no apparent business purpose, the kind of red flags that make forensic accountants wake up in cold sweats. Now I had a personal reason to dig deeper. Veda finally came home at 1:47 a.m. I heard her heels on the hardwood floor, the careful way she tried to be quiet. She slipped into bed without saying a word, her back turned to me. I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, and planned my next move. The thing about being married to a real estate attorney is that you learn a lot about shell companies. Veda had processed dozens of property transactions for Apex Strategic over the past 2 years. At the time, I'd been proud of her success. Now I wondered what those transactions really represented. The next morning, Veda tried to pretend nothing had happened. Coffee's ready, she said brightly as I entered the kitchen. She was dressed for court in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Thanks. I poured myself a cup and sat down at the kitchen island. About last night, she began, her voice carefully neutral. I think you misunderstood Cedric's comment. He was just making conversation, I know. I took a sip of coffee. How long have you been sleeping with him? She dropped her mug. It shattered on the tile floor, sending coffee and ceramic shards everywhere. Wes, how can you... Please, I'm a forensic accountant. Reading people is literally my job. The question is how long? She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed paper towels and knelt to clean up the mess. I don't know what you're talking about. 3 years, I said. That's my guess. It started right around the time you began handling Apex's real estate portfolio. Am I close? Her hands were shaking as she picked up the ceramic pieces. You're being paranoid. Maybe. We'll see. I finished my coffee and left for work. Behind me, I could hear Veda crying. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 12 years, wanted to go back and comfort her. But that part was getting smaller by the hour. My office at Sterling & Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse downtown. Nothing fancy, but it suited me. I preferred function over form, substance over style. Unlike some people. I had 3 active cases on my desk: a construction company skimming from city contracts, a nonprofit director embezzling donor funds, and a restaurant chain hiding revenue from the IRS. Routine work. But today I was starting an unofficial 4th case. I pulled up Apex Strategic's corporate filings on my computer. On the surface, everything looked legitimate. Cedric had been smart about covering his tracks. But 15 years of experience had taught me that everyone makes mistakes. You just have to know where to look. The first red flag was in the consulting fees. Apex charged clients between $50,000 and $75,000 per month for strategic advisory services. Not unusual for a high-end consulting firm. But when I cross-referenced their client list with public records, I found something interesting. Half of their clients were shell companies with no apparent business operations. No employees, no revenue, no assets beyond a bank account. They existed solely to pay Apex Strategic for services that were never rendered. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. This was going to be fun. My phone rang. Veda's name appeared on the screen. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at Bruno's at 7. Bruno's was a little Italian place where we'd had our first date. The choice felt deliberate, manipulative. She was trying to play on my emotions. Fine, I said. 7 o'clock? The line went quiet. She was probably expecting me to say something else, to give her some indication of my mood or intentions, but I'd learned long ago that silence was a powerful weapon. Wes, she said finally, I love you. Whatever you think is happening. See you at 7. I hung up and went back to work. Bruno's hadn't changed much in 13 years. Same red-checkered tablecloths, same smell of garlic and oregano. Same elderly Italian man behind the bar who looked like he'd stepped out of a Scorsese film. Veda was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands folded on the table. She'd changed out of her court clothes into jeans and a sweater, trying to look casual, approachable, the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. Thank you for coming, she said as I slid into the opposite seat. You said we needed to talk, so talk. She took a deep breath. I know you're angry about last night. Cedric's comment was inappropriate, and I should have said something. But Wes, you embarrassed me. You embarrassed all of us. Is that an apology? I'm trying to explain. No, you're trying to manage the situation. There's a difference. The waiter approached our table, a young guy with nervous eyes who clearly sensed the tension. We ordered drinks, wine for her, beer for me, and he retreated quickly. What do you want me to say? Veda asked. The truth would be refreshing. I've never lied to you. Really? So when you told me you were working late on the Henderson acquisition last Tuesday, you were actually working, not having dinner with Cedric at that new place on 5th Street? Her face went white. How did you? Credit card statements. You paid for dinner on the corporate account, then submitted it as a business expense. Sloppy, Veda. I taught you better than that. She stared at me for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Cedric and I, we're friends, close friends, but we're not sleeping together? No. The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that I almost admired her technique. If I hadn't already seen the evidence, I might have believed her. Show me your phone, I said. What? Your phone. If you're telling the truth, show me your text messages with Cedric. She clutched her purse tighter. I'm not going to let you invade my privacy just because you're feeling insecure. Insecure, I laughed. That's good. The husband who discovers his wife's affair is just being insecure. There's no affair. Her voice was loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. She looked around, embarrassed, then leaned forward. Wes, please. You're being paranoid. Yes, Cedric and I are close. Yes, we've had dinner a few times. But it's business. He's helping me with my career. By calling me your project? That was just guy talk. You know how men are. They say stupid things to impress each other. I took a long pull of my beer and studied her face. She was good. I had to give her that. The right mix of indignation and hurt feelings. If I were any other husband, I might have bought it. Tell me about the Meridian Properties deal, I said. The change of subject caught her off guard. What about it? $18 million commercial property purchase. Apex Strategic represented the buyer. You handled the legal work. Closed last month. So the buyer was a shell company incorporated in Delaware 3 weeks before the purchase. No business history, no credit rating, no apparent source of funds. Where did $18 million come from? I don't know. That's not my job. I handle the legal documentation, not the financing. Of course. Just like you don't know why Apex Strategic has been paying your firm $200,000 a month in consulting fees for the past year, or why those payments always come from different offshore accounts. Veda's wine glass trembled in her hand. You've been investigating my clients? I've been investigating your boyfriend's money laundering operation. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Veda set down her glass and straightened in her seat. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? $18 million in questionable real estate transactions. Shell companies with no legitimate business purpose, payments from offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Your boyfriend is washing money, Veda, and you're helping him do it. I'm not helping anyone do anything illegal. I'm a licensed attorney. I follow all applicable regulations. Willful blindness isn't a defense. Neither is paranoid jealousy. We stared at each other across the table. The pretense of a reconciliation dinner was crumbling fast. I want you to stop, she said finally. Stop what? Whatever investigation you think you're conducting. Cedric is my boss, Wes. These accusations could destroy my career. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started laundering money for him. I'm not laundering money. Then prove it. Show me the source documentation for the Meridian deal. Show me the beneficial ownership records for the shell companies. Show me one piece of evidence that these transactions are legitimate. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, Cedric and I are close. Closer than we should be. But it's not about money or business deals or whatever conspiracy theory you've cooked up. It's about the fact that he listens to me. He values my opinions. He doesn't treat me like I'm some kind of burden or project that needs to be managed. Like I do. Like you have for the past 3 years, ever since your promotion fell through and you started resenting my success. The accusation hit home because there was truth in it. I had been passed over for partner at Sterling & Associates 18 months ago. The disappointment had been crushing, especially when Veda's career continued to soar, but that didn't justify what she'd done. So, this is my fault? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll be sleeping in the guest room from now on. Wes, wait. But I was already walking away. The drive home gave me time to think. Veda's reaction had confirmed my suspicions about the affair, but it had also revealed something else. She genuinely didn't seem to understand the scope of Cedric's operation. That could mean she was an innocent dupe, or it could mean she was a very good actress. Either way, I had work to do. Back in my home office, I pulled up the files I'd been building on Apex Strategic. What I'd found so far was just the tip of the iceberg. The real money was hidden deeper in a network of shell companies and offshore accounts that would take weeks to untangle. But I had a head start. 3 years ago, I'd worked a case involving a construction company that was laundering money for a drug cartel. The methods were sophisticated but not unique. The same techniques kept showing up in different investigations, like a signature. Apex Strategic's operation had all the hallmarks of professional money laundering. Multiple shell companies to obscure the paper trail, real estate transactions to convert dirty money into clean assets, offshore accounts to hide the ultimate source of funds. The question was, whose money were they washing? I made a list of all the shell companies that had done business with Apex over the past 2 years. 17 in total, incorporated in Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming. All with generic names like Summit Holdings and Pacific Ventures. All with the same registered agent in Delaware. That was a mistake. Professional money launderers usually spread their shell companies across multiple jurisdictions and service providers. Using the same registered agent created a connection point that could be exploited. I started digging into the registered agent's other clients. It was tedious work, cross-referencing corporate filings and public records, but gradually a pattern emerged. The shell companies weren't random. They were all connected to a single source, a consulting firm in Miami called Global Strategic Partners. And Global Strategic Partners had some very interesting clients. According to their marketing materials, GSP specialized in international business development for high-net-worth individuals and family offices. That was code for helping rich people hide money from tax authorities. But when I looked deeper, I found connections to something much more serious. 3 of GSP's clients had been sanctioned by the Treasury Department for money laundering. 2 others were under investigation by the DEA for drug trafficking. Cedric wasn't just washing money, he was washing cartel money. The realization should have scared me. Instead, I felt a surge of professional excitement. This was the kind of case that could make a career, the kind of case that brought down entire criminal organizations, and my wife was right in the middle of it. I heard Veda's car in the driveway around 11. She came inside quietly, probably hoping I was already asleep. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of the bedroom door closing. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do with what I'd learned. I could turn everything over to the FBI and let them handle it. That would be the safe, responsible thing to do. Or I could keep digging, see how deep the rabbit hole went, find out exactly what my wife knew and when she knew it. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I'd never been the safe, responsible type. I was going to finish what Cedric had started at dinner, but on my terms, not his. The next morning brought the first surprise. I woke up to find Veda already gone. No coffee made, no note, just an empty house and the lingering scent of her perfume. She'd never left for work without at least saying goodbye, not in 12 years of marriage. The second surprise was waiting in my email inbox. Mr. Talren, I represent several parties who may have information relevant to your current interests. Would you be available for a confidential meeting this afternoon? Rowan Carrick, attorney at law. I stared at the message for a full minute. Rowan Carrick had been 3 years ahead of me at Northwestern. We'd known each other casually. He was the kind of guy who networked at every party and remembered everyone's name. After graduation, he'd gone into corporate law while I'd chosen the more mundane world of accounting. How did he know about my current interests? I called his office and was told he could see me at 2 p.m. The address was downtown, in one of those glass towers that sprouted like mushrooms after the financial district renovation. Carrick's office was everything mine wasn't. Mahogany furniture, Persian rugs, original artwork on the walls. The man himself had aged well, still lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of confident handshake that closed million-dollar deals. Wes, good to see you again. Thanks for coming on short notice. Cut the pleasantries, Rowan. How do you know what I'm working on? He smiled and gestured to a leather chair. Straight to business. I always liked that about you. Coffee? Just answers. Fair enough. He sat behind his desk and steepled his fingers. I know because Cedric Fallon is an old friend. We were roommates at Northwestern, actually. Kept in touch over the years. The pieces clicked into place. He called you. Last night, yes. He was quite upset about your dinner conversation. Something about IRS audits and investigations. And he sent you to what? Threaten me? Buy me off? Neither. He sent me to help you. That wasn't what I'd expected. Help me how? By giving you information that could be very valuable to the right people. The FBI, for instance, or the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I leaned forward. What kind of information? The kind that could put Cedric away for 20 years, along with his business partners, his clients, and anyone else who's been helping him wash money for the Sinaloa Cartel. The name hit me like a physical blow. Sinaloa was one of Mexico's most powerful drug trafficking organizations. If Apex Strategic was washing their money, this was bigger than I'd imagined. Why would you help me destroy your friend? Because Cedric stopped being my friend the moment he dragged an innocent woman into his operation? Rowan's expression hardened. Your wife doesn't know what she's involved in, Wes. She thinks she's handling legitimate real estate transactions for wealthy international clients. She has no idea the money comes from drug sales. How can you be sure? Because I've been feeding Cedric information about federal investigations for the past 2 years. I know exactly how much he tells his accomplices and how much he keeps to himself. Veda is a useful fool, nothing more. The revelation should have made me feel better. Instead, it made everything worse. My wife wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was a pawn being manipulated by men who saw her as expendable. What do you want in return? I asked. Immunity. When this all comes crashing down, I want to be on the right side of the law. I'm prepared to testify against Cedric and provide documentation of the entire operation. In exchange, I want a cooperation agreement with the Justice Department. I'm not a federal prosecutor. I can't make that deal. No, but you can make the introduction. You have contacts at the FBI from your previous cases. You know how these things work. He was right. I'd worked with federal agents on several major fraud cases over the years. They trusted my judgment and would take my calls. What's the timeline? Soon. The cartel is getting nervous about increased law enforcement attention. They're planning to shut down the operation and eliminate anyone who might talk. That includes your wife. The words sent a chill through me. Are you saying they would hurt Veda? I'm saying they've hurt people for less. Cedric thinks he's in control, but he's not. He's a small fish in a very big pond, and small fish get eaten when they become inconvenient. I stood up and walked to the window. Downtown traffic crawled along the street below, everyone going about their normal lives, oblivious to the criminal conspiracy playing out in the offices above their heads. There's something else, Rowan said behind me. Something you need to know about your wife's law partner. I turned back to him. Marlow Trasker? He's not just Veda's partner. He's Cedric's handler, the cartel's representative in the legal community. Everything that's happened, Veda's affair, your humiliation at dinner, even this conversation, it's all part of his plan. What plan? To neutralize you. Marlow knows about your background in forensic accounting. He knows you're smart enough to uncover the money laundering operation if you get suspicious. So he arranged for Cedric to seduce your wife, create a personal crisis that would distract you from the financial irregularities. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. My marriage hadn't just fallen apart, it had been systematically destroyed by people who saw it as an obstacle to their criminal enterprise. But it backfired, I said, spectacularly. Instead of being distracted, you started investigating. Now they have a problem they didn't anticipate. Me. You. And they're going to try to solve that problem very soon. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? Marlow is preparing ethics complaints against you with the State Accounting Board. Allegations of professional misconduct, conflicts of interest, maybe even embezzlement. Nothing that would stick in court, but enough to destroy your reputation and credibility. He can't prove something that didn't happen. He doesn't have to prove it. He just has to create enough doubt to discredit anything you might say about Apex Strategic. Who's going to believe a disgraced accountant with a grudge against his wife's boss? The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Destroy my credibility before I could use it against them. Turn my investigation into the desperate revenge fantasy of a cuckolded husband. When? I asked. The complaints will be filed Monday morning. By Tuesday, the story will be in the local business journal. By Wednesday, you'll be suspended from your firm pending investigation. 4 days. That's all the time I had to build a case that would stand up in federal court. I'll need everything, I told him. Documents, recordings, financial records, everything you have on the operation. I can get you most of it, but there's one piece of evidence that could seal the case, and I can't access it. What? Cedric keeps a personal record of all the cartel transactions. Names, amounts, dates, everything. He calls it his insurance policy. Proof that he was following orders, not running his own operation. Where does he keep it? His personal laptop. Never connected to the internet, stored in a safe at his condo. I thought about that. Getting access would require a warrant. Or a very good thief. I'm not a thief. No, but you're a man whose life is being destroyed by criminals. Sometimes the law isn't enough, Wes. Sometimes you have to take justice into your own hands. I looked at him for a long moment. Are you suggesting I break into Cedric's condo? I'm suggesting you do whatever it takes to protect your wife and stop a criminal organization from washing millions of dollars in drug money. How you interpret that is up to you. The meeting ended with Rowan giving me a flash drive containing financial records and recorded conversations. Enough evidence to interest federal investigators, but not enough to guarantee convictions. For that, I would need Cedric's insurance policy. Driving home, I thought about the choice in front of me. I could play by the rules, turn over what I had to the FBI, and hope they could build a case before Marlow destroyed my reputation. Or I could take Rowan's advice and get the evidence I needed by any means necessary. The decision was made for me when I got home and found my front door standing open. The house had been searched professionally, nothing obviously missing, but everything slightly out of place. Drawers opened and closed, papers shuffled, computer files accessed. They'd been looking for evidence of my investigation. In my home office, I found a note on my desk. Stop digging or start planning a funeral. The threat was clear enough, but it also told me something important. They were scared. Professional criminals didn't make threats unless they felt cornered. That meant I was on the right track. I called Veda's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried her office and was told she'd left early for a family emergency. What family emergency? Her parents were both healthy, and she had no siblings. I called her parents' house in Connecticut. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Oh, hello, Wes. How are you?" "Fine, Mrs. Patterson. Is Veda there?" "Veda? No, dear. Why would she be here?" "She left work early for a family emergency. I thought, there's no emergency here. Is everything all right?" I hung up without answering and tried to think. Where would Veda go if she was scared? Who would she turn to for help? The answer was obvious, and it made my chest tight with anger. She was with Cedric. Cedric's condo occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Arts District. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that screamed, "I have more money than taste." I'd been there once before, for a holiday party Veda had dragged me to. Even then, I'd noticed the excessive security, cameras, keycard access, a doorman who looked like he moonlighted as a bouncer. Now I sat in my car across the street, watching the building and trying to figure out how to get inside. The smart thing would be to call the FBI, report the threat, and let them handle it. But smart hadn't gotten me very far lately. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Parking garage, level B2, come alone." I stared at the message for a moment, then looked back at the building. Someone was watching me. Someone who wanted to talk. The parking garage was dimly lit and nearly empty. My footsteps echoed off concrete walls as I made my way to the second basement level. A figure emerged from behind a pillar, Rowan Carrick, looking nervous and checking over his shoulder. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Same thing you are, looking for your wife." "You know where she is?" "Cedric's place. He called me an hour ago, panicked. Said Marlow was accelerating the timeline. The ethics complaints are being filed tomorrow, not Monday." "Why the rush?" "Because someone broke into Marlow's office last night and photographed his files, including the fabricated evidence he was planning to use against you." I felt a surge of satisfaction. "The FBI?" "No, a private investigator hired by someone with a serious grudge against the operation." Rowan smiled grimly. "Turns out Cedric made an enemy of the wrong person, someone with the resources and motivation to bring him down." "Who?" "A federal judge whose daughter died from a fentanyl overdose last year. He's been quietly funding investigations into cartel money laundering operations. When he learned about Apex Strategic, he decided to take a more direct approach. The implications were staggering. We weren't the only ones hunting Cedric. There was a larger game being played, with players I didn't even know existed. Where does that leave us? In the middle of a war zone. Marlow knows his operation is compromised. He's moving to eliminate evidence and witnesses, starting with anyone who might cooperate with federal investigators. Including Veda. And you. And me, if he finds out about this conversation. I looked toward the elevator that led to the residential floors. Is she up there willingly? Does it matter? Cedric has convinced her that you're the threat, that you've lost your mind with jealousy and are making wild accusations to destroy her career. She thinks she's being protected. From what? From you. Cedric told her you made threats against both of them. He showed her the note that was left at your house, claimed you wrote it yourself as part of some elaborate frame job. The manipulation was masterful. Turn the victim into the aggressor, the investigator into the threat. Make my wife believe that the man trying to save her was actually trying to destroy her. I need to talk to her. That's what Cedric is counting on. He wants you to come up there, make a scene, maybe do something stupid that he can use to justify calling the police. Paint you as an unstable husband stalking his estranged wife. So what do you suggest? We get the evidence first. Prove what's really going on before we try to convince anyone. I can get you into the building, but you'll have to get the laptop yourself. How? Service elevator. Cedric's condo has a separate entrance for maintenance and deliveries. I have the access codes. He handed me a key card and a piece of paper with numbers written on it. The safe is in his home office, behind a painting of some abstract nonsense. The combination is his birthday, March 15th, 1982, 31582. How do you know all this? Because I helped him set up his security system, back when I thought I was helping a friend protect legitimate business interests. The service elevator was cramped and smelled like industrial cleaning supplies. It opened onto a narrow hallway lined with utility closets and storage rooms. Cedric's private entrance was at the far end, marked with a discreet brass nameplate. The keycard worked. I slipped inside and found myself in a mudroom that connected to the main living area. I could hear voices from somewhere deeper in the condo. Cedric's smooth baritone and Veda's higher pitch, though I couldn't make out the words. The home office was exactly where Rowan had said it would be, down a short hallway from the main living space. The abstract painting was impossible to miss, a violent splash of red and black that probably cost more than my annual salary. Behind it was a wall safe, digital lock glowing green in the dim light. I punched in the combination and held my breath. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were stacks of cash, several passports, and a laptop computer. I grabbed the laptop and was about to close the safe when something else caught my eye. A manila folder labeled V. Talren, my wife's file. I opened it and felt my world shift again. Inside were photographs of Veda and Cedric together, but not the kind I'd expected. These were surveillance photos taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. The timestamps went back 3 years, but the early photos showed them in business settings: restaurants, coffee shops, office buildings. The affair hadn't started 3 years ago. It had started 6 months ago. Everything before that had been professional manipulation, Cedric slowly building trust and dependency. There were also copies of Veda's financial records, her law school transcripts, even her medical history. They'd researched her like a mark, identified her vulnerabilities and pressure points. At the bottom of the file was a psychological profile prepared by someone with serious credentials. It described Veda as ambitious but insecure, seeking validation from authority figures, susceptible to manipulation through professional advancement opportunities. They'd turned my wife's career ambitions against her, used her own psychology to make her complicit in their crimes. I was so absorbed in the file that I almost missed the footsteps in the hallway. "Check the office," Cedric was saying. "If he's here, that's where he'll be." I shoved the laptop and file into a messenger bag I'd brought, closed the safe, and repositioned the painting. The footsteps were getting closer. I looked around for another exit and spotted a door that probably led to a balcony. It was locked, but the key was hanging on a hook nearby. I unlocked it as quietly as possible and stepped outside into the cold night air. The balcony overlooked the city, 30 floors above the street. Wind whipped around the building, making my eyes water. There was nowhere to go except back inside. The office door opened behind me. "Well, well," Cedric said. "The jealous husband comes calling." I turned to face him. He was alone, which surprised me. Either he was very confident or very stupid. "Where's Veda?" "Safe, which is more than I can say for you." He stepped onto the balcony, closing the door behind him. "Breaking and entering. Theft. Stalking. You're really making this easy for me." "Where is she?" "Somewhere you can't hurt her. She told me about your threats, Wes. About how you've been following her, going through her things, making wild accusations about money laundering and cartels. All true. All paranoid delusions from a man who can't accept that his wife found someone better." I laughed. "Better? You're a money launderer for drug dealers. You've helped poison thousands of people with fentanyl and heroin. You're going to spend the rest of your life in federal prison." "Prove it." "I intend to." "With what? Some financial records you stole from my office? Good luck getting those admitted into evidence after you obtained them through felony burglary." He had a point, but not a complete one. That's why I needed this. I held up the laptop. His face went pale. "That's my personal computer. You have no right?" "I have every right to protect my wife from criminals, even if she's too naive to protect herself." "Give it back." "No." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. A small automatic, the kind that fit easily in an ankle holster or briefcase. I said, "Give it back." I looked at the gun, then at his face. "You're not going to shoot me." "Why not? Jealous husband breaks into my home, attacks me, threatens my life. I defend myself. Very tragic, but completely justified. Except Veda would never believe that. She knows I'm not violent." "Veda will believe whatever I tell her to believe, just like she has for the past 6 months." The casual cruelty in his voice made something snap inside me. This man had systematically destroyed my marriage, manipulated my wife, and threatened to have me eliminated. And now he was pointing a gun at me like I was some kind of pest to be exterminated. "You know what your problem is, Cedric? Enlighten me. You think everyone else is as weak as you are. You think because you sold your soul for money and status, everyone else will do the same thing. Most people will. Your wife did. No, she didn't. She made mistakes, but she's not weak, and when she finds out the truth about what you really are, she's going to help me destroy you." "She'll never find out." "She already has." The voice came from behind Cedric. Veda stepped through the office door onto the balcony, her face streaked with tears and her hands shaking. "I heard everything," she said. "The psychological profile, the surveillance photos, the threats against my husband." Cedric spun around, the gun now pointed at both of us. "Veda, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You used me. You made me fall in love with you so you could use my law practice to wash drug money. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple." She looked at me, her eyes full of pain and regret. Wes, I'm so sorry. I thought you were being paranoid, but you were right about everything. We can fix this, I said, but first we need to get out of here. Cedric laughed bitterly. Nobody's going anywhere. You've both seen too much, know too much. Marlow was right. We should have handled this problem weeks ago. What are you going to do? Veda asked. Shoot both of us? If I have to. Murder-suicide. Jealous husband confronts cheating wife and her lover, everyone ends up gone. Very sad, but these things happen. I calculated distances and angles. The gun was pointed at Veda now, which meant I might have a chance to rush him. But 30 floors up on a narrow balcony, any mistake would be fatal. There's just one problem with your plan, I said. What's that? You're not the only one who's been recording conversations. I held up my phone, screen showing an active recording. Everything you just said is being uploaded to a secure server, along with the contents of your laptop and your wife's file. It was a bluff. My phone didn't have that capability. But Cedric didn't know that. His face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, calculation. Finally, he smiled. Nice try. But even if that's true, it doesn't matter. You'll both be gone before anyone can act on the information. Actually, a new voice said, they won't. Federal agents poured through the office door onto the balcony. Cedric spun toward them, gun raised, and I tackled him from behind. We went down hard on the concrete, the gun skittering away across the balcony. Cedric was stronger than he looked, but I had 15 years of pent-up frustration driving me. By the time the agents separated us, his nose was bleeding and my knuckles were raw. Wes Talren? The lead agent, a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair, showed me her badge. Agent Sarah Morrison, FBI. We've been looking for you. How did you find us? Your friend Mr. Carrick called us when he realized the situation was escalating. We've been investigating Apex Strategic for 6 months. I looked around the balcony. Veda was sitting against the wall, still crying. Cedric was in handcuffs, glaring at all of us with pure hatred. The laptop and files were being bagged as evidence. What happens now? I asked. Now we finish what you started. Your wife's cooperation will be essential, but she's not in any legal jeopardy. She was a victim, not a conspirator. And me? You're a hero. Stupid and reckless, but a hero. The evidence you gathered will help us dismantle one of the largest money laundering operations on the East Coast. As they led Cedric away, he looked back at me one last time. This isn't over, he said. Yes, I replied, it is. But I was wrong about that. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse watching my wife testify against the man she'd once thought she loved. Veda looked older, more serious, but also stronger somehow. The naive ambition that had made her vulnerable to Cedric's manipulation had been replaced by something harder and more resilient. Mr. Fallon told me the money came from wealthy international clients seeking privacy for legitimate business transactions, she said in response to the prosecutor's question. I had no reason to doubt him. Did you ever ask about the source of the funds? I asked general questions about due diligence and compliance. Mr. Fallon assured me that all necessary background checks had been performed. Were you aware that the shell companies had no legitimate business operations? No, I was told they were holding companies for family trusts and investment funds. The prosecutor nodded and made a note. When did you first become suspicious that something was wrong? When my husband began investigating the financial patterns. Initially, I thought he was being paranoid, but when I saw the evidence he'd gathered, I realized I'd been deceived. Across the courtroom, Cedric sat at the defense table, looking nothing like the confident man who'd humiliated me at dinner. Federal custody had not been kind to him. His expensive suits had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His perfect hair was unkempt, and his face bore the pallor of someone who hadn't seen sunlight in months. His lawyer had tried to pin everything on Marlow Trasker, claiming Cedric was just another victim of the operation. But the evidence from his laptop told a different story. Detailed records of every transaction, every payoff, every threat made to ensure cooperation. Cedric hadn't just been following orders, he'd been running his own subsidiary operation within the larger network. The trial had been front-page news for weeks. Local law firm used to launder cartel money. FBI breaks up multi-million-dollar drug operation. Forensic accountant exposes criminal conspiracy. My 15 minutes of fame had been surreal and uncomfortable. Reporters camped outside my house, colleagues treated me like a celebrity, and Sterling and Associates had fast-tracked my promotion to partner. Everyone wanted to associate themselves with the man who'd brought down the Sinaloa money laundering network. But the victory felt hollow. Yes, we'd stopped the criminals and saved Veda from prosecution, but our marriage was still broken, perhaps irreparably. Trust, once shattered, was not easily rebuilt. "The prosecution calls Wes Talren," the prosecutor announced. I walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs. This was the moment I'd been dreading, having to relive the entire nightmare in front of a jury, with Cedric watching my every word. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Jennifer Walsh, smiled encouragingly. "Mr. Talren, please tell the jury about your background in forensic accounting." I explained my education, my experience with financial crime investigations, my work with federal agencies on previous cases, establishing my credibility as an expert witness. "When did you first become suspicious of Apex Strategic Solutions?" "When I noticed unusual patterns in their consulting fees and client relationships. Companies with no apparent business operations paying enormous sums for unspecified services." "What did you do with these suspicions?" "I began investigating, quietly at first, then more aggressively when I realized the scope of the operation." "Did you share your concerns with your wife?" This was the painful part. I tried to, but she was emotionally involved with Mr. Fallon and refused to believe he could be involved in anything illegal. "How did you ultimately obtain the evidence that broke the case open?" I described the break-in at Cedric's condo, the discovery of his personal records, the confrontation on the balcony. The jury listened with rapt attention, several of them glancing at Cedric with obvious disgust. "Mr. Talren," the prosecutor said, "in your expert opinion, could this money laundering operation have continued without the participation of legitimate professionals like your wife?" "No. The entire scheme depended on having licensed attorneys and real estate professionals who could provide a veneer of legitimacy to the transactions. Without that, it would have been obvious that the money was dirty." "And do you believe your wife knowingly participated in money laundering?" "Absolutely not. She was manipulated and deceived by people who exploited her professional ambitions and personal vulnerabilities." The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal, but ineffective. He tried to paint me as a jealous husband whose accusations were motivated by personal revenge rather than professional duty. But the evidence spoke for itself. Millions of dollars in dirty money, detailed records of criminal activity, connections to known cartel operations. When it was over, I felt drained but relieved. Whatever happened next, the truth was finally on the record. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, tax evasion. Cedric showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but his lawyer's face went ashen. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around me with questions and cameras. I gave a brief statement about justice being served and the importance of financial professionals maintaining ethical standards. Then I pushed through the crowd and walked to my car. Veda was waiting for me in the parking lot. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty, tired, relieved." "I'm proud of you. What you did took incredible courage." I looked at her for a long moment. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, but something fundamental had changed between us, something that couldn't be fixed with words or time. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately." "And?" "I think we need to be honest about what this did to us, to our marriage. You saved my life and my career, but you also investigated me like I was a criminal. I betrayed our marriage vows, but I also genuinely believed I was protecting myself from someone who'd become obsessed and paranoid." She was right. We'd both made choices that had damaged our relationship beyond repair. The question was whether we could build something new from the wreckage. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said. "I don't know if I can trust you either, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is whether we want to try." I thought about that as I drove home alone. The house felt different now. Bigger, emptier, full of memories that would never be quite the same. Veda had moved into a hotel after Cedric's arrest, giving us both space to process what had happened. My phone rang as I was pouring myself a drink. Agent Morrison's number appeared on the screen. "Congratulations," she said when I answered. "Justice served?" "Thanks. I assume this closes the case?" "This phase of it, but there are still loose ends to tie up. Marlow Trasker's trial starts next month, and we're working on extraditing several cartel figures from Mexico." "What about Rowan Carrick?" "Full immunity in exchange for his cooperation. He'll testify at the remaining trials, then disappear into witness protection." "And Veda?" "Clean. The Justice Department reviewed her involvement extensively and concluded she was a victim, not a conspirator. Her cooperation was essential to securing the convictions." I hung up and sat in my living room, surrounded by the detritus of my old life. Wedding photos, vacation souvenirs, shared books, and furniture that had once represented a future together. Now they felt like archaeological artifacts from a civilization that no longer existed. 3 days later, Veda came home. "I've been thinking," she said, setting her suitcase down in the hallway, "about what you said, about trust. And you're right. We can't go back to what we had. Too much has happened, too much has been broken. But maybe we can build something new, something based on who we are now, not who we used to be." That's a nice thought, but how do we actually do it? Slowly, carefully, with complete honesty about what we both did wrong and what we both need to feel safe going forward. I looked at her standing in our hallway, surrounded by the remnants of our old life, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, and not trust, but something like hope. "Okay," I said, "let's try." The road ahead would be long and difficult. There would be setbacks, arguments, moments when we both wondered if we were making a mistake. But for the first time in months, I felt like we had a chance. Cedric Fallon was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Marlow Trasker got 30. The cartel operation was dismantled, its assets seized, its members scattered or imprisoned. And Veda and I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our marriage from the ground up. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when this all started, but it was the ending we'd earned, messy, complicated, and real. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Sometimes that's enough.